Okay, yeah, this is Phil, and it's been a pretty traumatic few days here, but thank you all for praying. And my family, I feel like my aunties and uncles and Japanese brothers are all up there at Shichigahama, around Takayama, some of you know, where we have our second home up there on the ocean. And so my objective really was just simply to get up there and try and understand if there's any way that we could really constructively help. And to tell you the truth, personally, it was to go to shelter and just see if I could find many of their names on the list. Boy, the Lord was good, and I was actually able to find a couple dozen of them. That was wonderful. I mean, I'll never be the same. You just can't imagine when you think, not that your friends like died in a car crash or in a hospital, but got blown to smithereens. And so, in any case, there was a Dutch television crew, and they were desperate to get north. And I thought, quite frankly, in my heart of hearts, they had a sat phone and press passes, and maybe it'd help me get through the roadblocks. So they jumped in, and we headed north on the regular roads and had to, wind our way around. I mean, it's pretty surprising. The news, of course, is all along the coastline, but there's been a lot of damage, and the roads are all cracked and broken up, and a lot of the bridges were cracked and broken, so that we had to go around them, and it took 13, 14 hours to get up there. But we got up there and we headed through Natori, and right on the edge of, you could just see for a couple of miles straight out towards the sea. It was just been flattened, and people were just kind of, the only people you saw were in lines. They were either in lines for gasoline or in their cars, or standing in lines for food, water, or kerosene. And because there's no electricity, no running water, no gas, of course. And so we made our way around, and the first road to Shichigahama was like impassable, and we went up to the next one, Route 45, which you would never imagine is a road that's near the coast, and started down that, and going through Takajo, it was like a war zone. I mean, cars piled on top of cars, the restaurants we go to, some of our favorite stores, Hardoff, cars right through the front of the thing, and tank truck, on top of them. And that was really overwhelming, because I was kind of preparing myself for getting to the coast, but we were nowhere near the coast. I mean, if you can imagine sitting in a restaurant, in a neighborhood miles from the coast, and a big earthquake came, you would never imagine that you had to run from a tsunami. So in any case, we made our way through there, and then there was one bridge that hadn't gone out. The water went over it, but it's the other side of the island, the peninsula called Shichigahama. And so we went up through the highland and then curved around and down, and for the first time I could see our little neighborhood near our cabin, and it was just absolutely devastated. I mean, it was blown to pieces. And so anyway, I climbed through it and went around and just started trying to. There was no human beings around at all. It was just absolutely, the area is blank. But I went up to our house, which is, to describe, it's probably 50 feet high on a 50, 60 foot high cliff, but we're on the low end of the hill right over the beach. And I could see it in the distance that it was still standing. I really thought that the dirt had been carved out and it had been flipped over from the force of the wave. And I have to tell you that the house was not at all, I mean, I assumed the house was gone, fine. I was really there to find my friends and to see about what I could, just for a couple of days, try and evaluate what we could really constructively do later. That was the only reason I was there. But it was kind of a traumatic thing, going up to the house, and the way that the land had been carved away at the end of the beach, it looked like the whole thing was off and leaning over. But apparently that wave hit the cliff so hard, it threw one of our favorite trees sticking out in front of the cliff over the top of the house into the parking lot, and then the backwash came back and blew the bottom doors off the house, and went into the underneath and threw all of our stuff out. But the water level came right to the floor of the lower level of the house and never went above it. It's amazing. I mean, it was way above it outside, but it all washed back. before it soaked through. So, and our jet skis were hanging in a tree and hadn't gone down, down the cliff to the beach. But enough of that. That was really not even part of the agenda. So then I turned around and I thought, okay, I need to head up. I mean, it's kind of a numbing thing. It's like you got out of a plane crash and you're just kind of wandering around. It was quite unbalancing. And I headed back to the neighboring area, to the coastline, and I saw two people in the distance, and I got a little closer to them, and I realized it was the daughter and her husband of my very good friends. I mean, these are like family, and so I ran and gave them a hug, and that was kind of a overwhelming time, and I asked them about their parents, and they said, oh, they're alive, and they're trying to set up a campsite in a parking lot, a little further up the hill. So, I mean, that was, I have to say, one of the best moments of my life. It really was. I mean, there's no question about it. And, I went from there, and it was just remarkable. In a rather short couple of days, I found, 24 of our closest friends that I've known, some of them since I was, a baby, some of these older people, and a lot of them since my kids were born, in this last 20 years. And it was just an amazing thing. And I went eventually to the shelters, found, more of them, and I went back into our cabin and was surprised how much staples we have there, because just sits there all year round, and all the pasta and soups and everything, and got a couple of big sacks, and we started distributing that, and then we took old scaffolding pipes and began making some tents. I had a bunch of blue sheets, and so did a little bit what we could. But let me tell you about this sign. Is that all right? Can you see this? I don't know.
That's good, yes.
Yeah. Japan doesn't have a whole lot of biblical references of any kind. But this says, Shu wa waga, the Lord is mine. And this is probably Michi. So the Lord is my way. And I pulled this out of my, my very good friend's second floor. The second floor part of his house was in the middle of the main road, 100, 200 yards from where his house used to be. And of course, this had nothing to do with him. It just was there. And there are piles of rubble. As who was it, Anderson Cooper or someone said, 10 feet thick. Well, you can get near where the boats are piled up about 30 feet high. And I don't know even how this caught my eye. I just pulled it out, and there it is. The Lord is my way. And that was no coincidence, because of course that's the theme of our lives, and certainly about this. But I have to tell you that the overwhelming feeling was I had hope. It was such a devastating thing, and that earthquake was scary. I was on a train in Tokyo, and it felt like it hit a house. I mean, it just jumped all over. And I had no idea how my wife was doing, in 50-year-old school buildings, and eventually found her. But assuming most of our friends were, very dead and gone, and that was breaking our hearts, and that's why I had to get in the old truck and get up there, and to get up there and then be reminded that the Lord is our way was kind of an amazing thing.